Coming up in the next 90 minutes, fire guts Greater Accra Regional Office of Electoral Commission consuming essential materials and equipment for the election management body. We get the latest from the EC and the fire service, which is investigating the cause of the blaze. Also, calls for scrapping of Sanitation Ministry dominate Thursday's maiden minority political parties and independent presidential aspirants debate. We hear the ideas which have been touted by experts as groundbreaking. And we take a trip around the country to discover the key stories we may have overlooked this week as we hear from our correspondent. My name is Daniel Dazin. Welcome to The Pulse.
The Pulse is brought to you by
Stop Cough from Ernest Chemists.
Great to have you join us this afternoon. Now, we begin in Parliament, where the minority is demanding answers from government on who frontline COVID-19 healthcare workers are benefiting from the 50% extra allowance are, as they allege BNI officers have been included in that list. Now, Parliament today approved tax waivers to the tune of 174 million Ghana cedis for healthcare personnel. A report of the Finance Committee said 21.6 million Ghana cedis has been spent on additional allowances for the healthcare personnel for April, May and June 2020. Kumungo MP Ras Mubarak claims the list of frontline healthcare workers is unfair.
It's important that this House is told who has been captured as far as the list of beneficiaries are concerned. It is very important that we know exactly which category of employees. For instance, in the committee has given a report. There is no list of who constitutes those who would be benefiting from this. Basically, supporting people who are working in critical areas is very important, but it must not be shrouded under the cloth of secrecy as it is. And I would want to inquire from the chairman of the committee whether, for instance, the Bureau of the National Investigation is included in the list of those who would be benefiting. If they are included, Mr. Speaker, what happens to others who are equally providing critical services? You cannot submit a report like this to the Parliament of Ghana without letting the House know exactly who are benefiting from these. And we know that there are many workers in the health sector who have also agitated that they've included in the list of those who will be benefiting from this incentives, who are not included. So how do you ignore some section of persons working in the area of health and then include the Bureau of National Investigation, Mr. Speaker? These are things that I hope that the committee would provide clarity for.
Now, Vice Chairman of Parliament's Health Committee, Dr. Ayuwe says there's been a difficulty defining who constitutes frontline health personnel, but that has been addressed now.
Mr. Speaker, previously we had thought that they were going to focus entirely on health workers. But in the committee meeting, we realized that there has been some interagency collaboration, and for that matter, we have broadly increased the persons who the definition initially was so limited to as health workers, which means that there will be immigration officers and other state agencies who have now been captured into the definition of who a frontline health worker is. And it is revealing that for the 2 months April and 2 months of successively April, May, June, it was 6,091, and then also in the ensuing month in May, it was 7,418, and then in June, it was 7,196. So clearly shows that the numbers have been changing. We could suggest that other agencies has been coming on board as they identify them.
We'll go back to Parliament for more clarification on this issue from our correspondent Joseph Opoku Gakpo. But in the meantime, senior healthcare workers at one of Ghana's major COVID-19 treatment centers, the Ga East Municipal Hospital, have confirmed admission of lesser cases this month. Ghana currently has 39,718 recoveries out of 41,847 confirmed cases. The frontline workers say the number of reduced positive cases is encouraging, but urged all citizens to continue following protective measures. They spoke with JoyNews on the sidelines of a PPE donation exercise to the facility by MultiChoice Ghana.
This is, I always call it the second phase of our support for the fight against COVID. I want to say a big thank you for this wonderful gesture. We believe it will go a long way to help us. If you see the amounts or the quantity gathered here, I believe we've come far. And so I want to thank you and to also appeal to other organizations that the fight is not one person's fight. The fight is for all of us. So others should also come and help us with the construction and the opening of the new 100-bed infectious disease center. It means that we will need a lot of these things to help and aid in our jobs. I also want to use this opportunity to advise everybody watching us that we are not through yet. So please, let us make sure we continue to adhere to the protocols. But I believe, as the President said, this too shall pass. On that note, I say a big thank you to DSTV, Go TV. God bless you. God bless you. My name is Reverend Samuel Obe Mensah. I'm the head of Health Administration and Support Services for Ghana East Municipal Hospital. It's a very big good news for us this morning. The reason is that it will help us in our work towards COVID-19. As you're all aware, there is the National Treatment Center, and by this donation, our frontline health workers, that is the nurses, the doctors, those who are inside helping the patients, it's a big moral booster for them. So the message is just one, and that is what I've been saying always. COVID has come to stay with us. You don't know when he will leave. And so what we have to do is to fight it. And the easiest way to fight the COVID is to put on your nose mask, is to observe the hand washing and the running water, is to practice social distancing and all the other things that is involved in fighting it. By the use of hand sanitizers, etc. I believe that when it is done properly, it will go a long way to help curb the spread of the disease.
It would seem we are not getting as many numbers as we used to in terms of active cases of COVID-19. Is it the same for the Ghana East Municipal Hospital?
I believe the reason is that we have really fought it. You know, from the government right down to the health workers and to everybody, the fight against it has been very strong, and I believe that is what has necessitated the low numbers. And so let's continue doing the fighting.
Can we confirm that we began receiving less numbers of COVID-19 at this facility?
Yes, we have done.
Yes, at the moment we have, as compared to from the onset, at the moment we have about 12 cases.
And at this time last month you had more than that?
More than that. We've treated over 600 and over. But at the moment, we have only 12.
So we can confirm that numbers have been down?
Yes, definitely. Even ICU, we don't have any case there. Now, everybody, the cases are improving, so they are just normal.
And you are, madam?
I'm Felicia Gatti.
And you are a nurse here?
Head of nursing.
My name is Cecil Sunkwamils. I'm the Managing Director for MultiChoice Ghana. We are the national agents, and we sell Go TV and DSTV across the country. Today, we've gathered here at the Ghana Municipal Hospital, Ghana East Municipal Hospital, for our major second contribution towards the fight for COVID. Our initial support has been mainly on air in terms of media, in terms of partnerships, both directly on our TV screens and also in partnership with the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association and the Ministry of Information. We've done a lot of campaigns on the wearing of face masks, and then also recently
We've supported the fight against stigmatization of people who have been infected. But today we've gone another step. And in fact, if I say today, yesterday and today, we have done 2 donations for PPEs, namely 10,000 and...
Let's go back to Parliament. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo has joined us live. Joseph, give us details on the tax waivers that are being applied for frontline health work. Right, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our man in Parliament, and he'll join us shortly.
Daniel, just to go through the details for you, this is a tax waiver to the tune of 174 million Ghana cedis. Specifically, not half, but 168 million cedis of that is actually amount that's going into the personal emolument in terms of the tax waiver on that, and then an additional amount of 5.713 million is actually taxes on the additional allowances that the healthcare workers will be getting. All of that totaling the 174 million that they would go into that particular move. Now, just to give you some additional details, this report of Parliament Finance Committee has also been giving us the general details on what we can expect in terms of how much government is spending on the said basic allowance for various healthcare persons. So we are expecting that for the month of April, May, June, the additional allowances that are being paid to the healthcare workers, the April amount is 6.5 million Ghana cedis, another 7.5 million for the month of May, and then for the month of June, it will be an amount of 7.6 million Ghana cedis. And so those will be the figures. As far as the money that's going to frontline health workers is concerned. Now, just for clarity on this, we know that the president's announcement was that for the general tax waivers is going to all healthcare persons, but those who are frontline workers will be getting an additional amount of 50% on their basic salaries, which is actually what is amounting to the figures that I just shared with you. From the committee's report, we gather that for the month of April, about 6,091 healthcare workers are described as frontline and will benefit from this. For the month of May, there are 7,418, and also for the month of June, then there are 7,196. But the claim that the Kumungu MB Ras Mubarak is making is that security persons are on this list, and he's not happy about that because some of the healthcare people are not benefiting. He's joining us for a quick conversation. Many thanks for joining us, Honorable Mubarak. Pleasure. So where are these details you are alluding to coming from, that BNI personnel are on the list of frontline healthcare persons who are benefiting from this additional allowances as far as COVID-19 is concerned? Well, it is a fact that the intent supporting, first of all, let me say that it's exciting to see that healthcare workers or health personnel are getting some form of support in respect of incentives to help them do a good job in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic. But sadly, we are beginning to see a trend where some category of other workers who have literally nothing to do, who cannot be classified as health workers, are considered to be given incentive. And I think it would raise a lot of labor issues for us in the country, and we seriously don't need that at the moment. If you look at the staff of the Controller and Accountant General's Department, for instance, they work day and night to get things going, to make sure that frontline health workers get paid. Unfortunately, they haven't been considered. And we have instances where the Bureau for National Investigation or officers of the Bureau for National Investigation are included. And that is why I raised it on the floor of Parliament that, this Parliament of Ghana is a house of records. If the government intends to incentivize some category of security personnel, it shouldn't be shrouded in secrecy. Unfortunately, and rather sadly, that is what we are seeing. You would expect that even when the committee report came to the floor of the House, they would have listed, for instance, maybe doctors, nurses, pharmacists, cleaners, and so on, so that the Ghanaian public would know exactly who is encapsulated in the list of beneficiaries. As we speak, there are many frontline health workers who have not even received their emoluments, their incentives yet. And we are faced with an instance where they are beginning to consider paying Bureau of National Investigation workers. And you ask yourself, what have they got to do with this? Because I know for a fact, from my checks, that the
I mean, the BNI takes data from hospitals, but it's usually once in a week. They will probably call the hospital to get the data. Some of them don't even, visit these health centers to ascertain what is exactly happening on the ground. So it's not right, and it's not fair for the millions of workers, I mean the hundreds of thousands of workers up and down the country who are equally providing essential service, doing their best, putting their shoulders to the wheel, and all of these workers, have tightened their belt. If we are in difficulty, and government is saying that we need to incentivize health workers because of the role they are playing, you would expect that such assistance would go strictly to health workers. But insofar as they want to open the floodgates and begin to give the BNI, incentives for literally little or no work done, they might as well consider staff of the Ministry of Local Government. At the local level, they are doing a lot. They might as well consider staff of the Accountant General's Department. They might as well even consider journalists and incentivize, give incentives for the service you're giving to Mother Ghana.
My final question will be, and I'm quoting from the committee's report directly, it says, as to who constituted frontline personnel, the committee was informed that there has been a challenge in defining who a frontline healthcare worker is, but in collaboration with the relevant agencies, a working definition of frontline health person has been accepted, and that the personnel were said to be those who are working in the most critical and risky areas in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Couldn't it be that these security persons are actually within that range, which is why they also deserve to be on the list?
Is it not disgraceful that we are putting BNI officials who could be playing no more important a role than staff of the Controller and Accountants General's Department, who could be playing no more important a role than staff of the Ministry of Local Government, who could be playing no more important a role than parliamentary service staff, not receiving anything, and yet the BNI is being considered for it. And to see that it's even been shrouded in secrecy, struggling to define who frontline health workers are.
We are told the others have accepted this. Presumably, they collaborated with the health institutions and the healthcare worker groups in coming to a decision on this, because the report says, in collaboration with the relevant agencies, that working definition has been accepted, and that's what they are working with. You're doubting that probably the healthcare workers are in on this?
This should not be acceptable by the Ghanaian public. We want full accountability. We want full disclosure on who is in on this, on who is getting what. From these incentives that are meant, look at the committee's report, to health workers. So one would assume that it would even include non-essential staff of various hospitals up and down the country, which is great. But to include the BNI, excluding staff of the Controller and Accountant General's Department, excluding staff of the Ministry of Local Government, you ask yourself what is really happening. And it is for this that we ask that the government should come clean on this and give the Ghanaian public full disclosure on who's getting what.
Many thanks for joining us. Ras Mubarak is the Member of Parliament for the Kumu constituency, joining us with those details there. And thanks very much for joining us. And to Daniel, those have been the development. For those on the majority side, they think the move will help incentivize healthcare workers to be able to do more as far as the fight against COVID-19 is concerned.
Thank you very much, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, for that update from Parliament. Now, still on COVID, let's take a look at the global situation. Germany is facing fresh coronavirus infections as football fans are prevented from going to pitches till at least the end of October. The German league restarted in mid-May after a suspension of more than 2 months, becoming the first European league to resume under strict rules to contain the spread of the COVID-19 disease. The number of new cases in Germany is still hovering around 1,000 per day. Correspondent Kate Brady is political correspondent with our partners DW and joins us with more details. Kate, let's start off with the case counts. Germany has reported its highest number of cases since early May. What's the latest?
So the Robert Koch Institute for Public Health here in Germany announced today that there were 1,226 new cases registered here in Germany yesterday. So we're still far away from the peak of more than 6,000 new daily cases that we were seeing back in April. But at the same time, German Health Minister Jens Spahn has said that this is reason to be concerned. At the moment, he says that the German healthcare system can cope with the numbers, especially around the 1,000 mark. But at the same time, one of the main concerns is that a lot of these new cases aren't being traced back to localized outbreaks that can be easily contained like we've seen in recent weeks, but that this seems to be across the country, and we're seeing cases pop up in all sorts of places. Now, there's several contributing factors that have been highlighted, including people returning from holidays, also people returning to schools now, but also that we've seen an increase in the number of cases being traced back to family gatherings as well. And just anecdotally speaking, it does seem that people are becoming slightly more negligent, especially when it comes to mask wearing requirements around the country.
Interesting. It's quite similar to the situation we are seeing in Ghana, Kate, that last sentence you mentioned. Now, Berlin is potentially considering an alcohol ban in bars if the numbers continue to rise. How do authorities intend to do that?
Well, what we're seeing at the moment is a number of different measures being implemented still around the country. We have a federal system here in Germany, so different states are handling things differently. So if you look to the south, for example, down in Munich, in Bavaria, there's a soft curfew still in place there, for example, and at 11 p.m. every night it's lights out for bars and restaurants, while up in Hamburg in northern Germany there's actually an alcohol ban in place again this weekend after that was tested last weekend, and the hope there of local authorities is to discourage people from gathering in large groups in big public spaces, which of course is a very attractive idea to many people right now, especially due to this heat wave that we're experiencing here.
Speaking of large gatherings, Kate, and this is our final question, there's a big setback this week for fans of Germany's beloved Bundesliga. Your health minister extended a ban for spectators in stadiums. What does this mean for fans and the league?
Well, the Bundesliga was the world's first major football league to return to the pitch back in May to finish up their season, but to finish that season, indeed, it was without any fans in the stadium. So there had been hopes that as of September 1st, spectators would have been allowed back into the stadiums. But health ministers have decided that that's simply out of the question at the moment, especially due to this uptick in the number of new cases. And even many fans, although they were keen to get back into the stadiums, were sceptical about the health and safety plans that had been suggested by the German Football League. But of course, in the meantime, clubs are keen to get fans back into stadiums, especially when it comes to the financial reasons as well.
Thank you very much, Kate Brady. She's a correspondent with our partners, DW. You're still live on The Pulse with me, Daniel Dazi. We'll take a few minutes, but when we come back, we take you across the country where we recap the stories you may have overlooked this week as we speak to our own correspondents. Stay with us. Now, that segment where we hear from our correspondents is here. Today, we touch base with all our reporters across the country on stories they covered during the week. We begin with Martina Bugri from the northern region. She brings us that sad story of a 10-year-old Alassane Abukari who has stopped attending school because he cannot write. This is because he lost both of his hands in a fire when he had a seizure 3 years ago. Alassane says he hopes his dreams of becoming a teacher will be achieved despite his condition. Watch this first.
Alassane was born a normal child like other children in his neighborhood in Yampala in the northern region. He had a pleasant life until one evening at age 7 When he had a seizure, his parents thought it was convulsion, but it turned out to be epilepsy when they visited the hospital. A month later, his mother was in the room with him and his newly born twins. Alhassan said he was going to attend to Nature's Call, but instead of returning to his mom after Nature's Call, he went to sit by fire his mom had set. Unfortunately, he had another seizure and fell in the fire. They were grown when the illness attacked him. I was at a funeral when they called me that he had convulsion, but it turned out to be epilepsy. That was the beginning. But on the day his hands got bent, I had given birth and was with the children in the room with him. He said he was going outside to attend Nature's Call. But when he returned, instead of coming back to the room, he went and sat by the fire I had set. He got a seizure and fell in the fire. By the time I came out, all his hands were bent. Ignorance of the consequences of taking Alhassan home from hospital and money had become a crucial subject to save his hands. But from where I sit in a compound where poverty is visible all over, a house with broken walls, rooms without doors, a compound scattered with just one stoop.
Right, the story there, and Martina Bugri has joined us on via Zoom. Now, Martina, how is he faring now? Please unmute your microphones, Martina. I think there's a challenge with your microphones,
yes,
Martina.
I just unmuted. It comes on and off, and so currently he's doing well, even though he's not like any other child who would love to play around and then have fun like any other child. Most often he's very quiet in the corner where he just sits down soberly instead of joining his colleagues. And it's very sad to see a child who would have loved to be like other children, but because of just a bit of a challenge, things have gone very bad for him. Now, when I walked into the compound of the house, it was so sad that in this season, you have rooms without doors, just people go in and then they have to use just a cloth or something to cover to save themselves from the cold, the harsh weather. And they had just one stool. And so they had to go and borrow from their neighbors a bench for us to sit. This tells you that there's no way this family can be able to get the artificial hands for this boy, who would, which would help him to get education and then be able to live a better life in the future.
I'm curious, how is he able to take a bath or eat the normal things we do with our hands? Who is helping him do that?
The mom says she has to do everything for him, from bathing, he going for Nature's Call, any other thing that he has to do in the house, the mom has to do it for him.
What kind of effect is his condition having on his family?
It is having a lot of effect, and the mother cannot go anywhere except to be home all the time because he has to keep an eye on him. The epilepsy is one issue, and then the hands all gone to is another issue. And so the mother says she has had to stop doing a lot of things and stay home most of the time because of him.
But how did you find them, Martina?
I got a call from a lady who had worked in the community and said there was this boy who needed help, if I could come and see him and then see if the story was worth telling. And when I saw the boy, definitely I knew the story was worth telling.
Thank you very much, Martina Bugri, and thank you very much for bringing us this story. All the best, Alhassan Abukari. Now let's go to the Ashanti region for another sad story. This week, Prince Apia reported of the killing of a pastor in the region. The 44-year-old man of God with Jehovah Nissi Church at Ejiso was murdered in cold blood. The incident occurred Wednesday dawn at his residence in Santasi in Yinam New Site. Let's speak to Prince now. Prince, what is the update from the police?
Daniel, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Prince.
Yeah, so as we speak now, the police had, embarked on some, how do you call it, some operation in certain parts of the Kumasi municipality and metropolitan area. And what they've done is that they've arrested a number of people. And what the police say is that they are now profiling them and trying to understand which of these people are connected to the incident that occurred on Wednesday dawn. And after that, they will definitely put them before the law, and the rest will be followed. So that is what is coming from the police now. At least a swoop was done, and a number of people have been arrested. It was basically in criminal dens in the Kumasi metropolis, and some people have been arrested and they are being profiled.
I see in the videos that you brought in that the family of the pastor is devastated. How are they faring now?
It still has been very difficult for the family. A lot of people continue to troop to the family house, also at Santase, to commiserate with the family. So anytime anybody gets there, then it becomes very difficult for the widow in particular to hold back her tears. She will continue weeping, and a lot of people will join in. And so for the family house, it's been sober, it's been sad, tearful all through since it started. In the Santase community proper, the landlord, for instance, had put in place some measures with the tenants. And now what they are saying is that on the fateful day that the incident occurred, the main door was not closed. And it has been a practice for a while now. So now it has become part of their new regulations, that tenancy agreements, that now everybody is supposed to get a padlock. When you come, you have to, everybody must get a key to a padlock to that particular door. And anytime anybody enters, if you're the last person or not, you just lock it. The next person that comes must open and enter. And that will also help with the security in that area. And I must say that the police have also, stepped up security in that area.
Prince, thank you very much for that update. Now, still within the region, let's speak with Mohammed Nuruddin on the killing of nomadic herdsmen in the area and also an armed robbery attack which led to the killing of one person. Nuruddin, tell us more about this.
First of all, let me talk about the armed robbery incident which occurred at Ahinkro here in the Ashanti region. What happened was that there is a story we did last year about mango farmers in the Kintampo area. I mean, this story was about the mango bacteria black spot disease, which is actually ravaging farmlands in the area. So there was this group of people who came to help the farmers manage the disease. So what we did was to go back and find out whether that help has actually yielded some results for the farmers. So we went to go to some of the farms to look at the yield rate, how much they're getting from each acre of farmland, because in the past, they were getting between 5 and 7 tons of mango from each acre, an acre of farmland. But because of the disease, they were actually getting less than 1 ton, 1.5 tons from an acre. So they trained them on how to prune the mango trees, to apply some pesticides, and among other things. So we went back and we realized things are doing well for the farmers. So when we were coming back from Kintampo to Kumasi, we did not get a vehicle from Kintampo straight to Kumasi. So what we did was take board a vehicle from Kintampo to Techimai. So we got to Techimai around 10:30, and we decided to take another vehicle from Techimai to Kumasi. So by the time we had left Techimai, it was around 11 p.m. in the night.
That's quite the experience you had, Nuruddin, when you went there. Thank you very much for those updates you brought on that killing. We'll get more on the other story a bit later. Now, Richard Kojoyako joins us from the Central region on a cycle protest by fishermen. Now, Richard, I've lived around fishing communities almost my entire life, and it's quite rare to find fishermen protest against an illegal fishing activity. How did this happen in the first place?
Well, so in times past, the fishermen were accused that they used other illegal fishing practices such as dynamite, DDT, undersized fishing nets. But this time, what they are protesting against is the illegal transshipment at sea, popularly known as psycho. Now, let me tell you about psycho. Psycho is the situation whereby the industrial trawlers, they go on the high seas, they use undersized nets that they are not supposed to use, that is bad by law, and then they catch all the small fishes that are reserved for artisanal fishes. And so they go there and then they catch all of these. Now, the intriguing and then the damaging effect of psycho is that they catch these things, and the ones they deem undesirable, they throw them back into the sea, causing pollution in the sea. So what happens is that fishermen from Apam, mostly Apam, Elmina, they meet them halfway on the sea, and then they get this kind of fish, and then they store them, and then they sell them to the public. Now, this is accounting for the dwindling fish stocks we are witnessing. So very soon, scientists have told us that very soon, in a period of about 2 years, there might not be any fish for you and I to consume whenever we even go to the fishes market. And so that is what they are protesting. Now, the height of it is that they are in their bumper season and they are expected to have some bumper harvest. But because of these activities, fishes that are reserved for them, they are not getting any more. And so that is why they are protesting now. So if you look at along the 4 coastal regions of the country, Western, Central, Greater Accra, and Volta, they are staging a silent protest, and that is really the first step they are activating. And then,
so have they heard from authorities, Richard?
Well, so in the 2020 budget, government put it in that they are going to ensure that a total ban of cycle. But the fishermen say they have waited and waited, and nothing like that is happening. And so that is why they are using this kind of protest. In fact, they've been engaging authorities, but authorities seem not to do anything about it. And so that is why they are using this means.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us from the Central region. Let's head a bit further west and speak to Natalia Quanta, joining us from the Takoradi Market Circle. Ina, I understand the compliance of COVID-19 safety protocols in the market is not encouraging.
Yes, Daniel. If you can see from the backdrop, this is where these traders were relocated to the Jubilee Park, but you can see that they are back. Lots of activities ongoing there. It's sad to say that ever since Honorable KK Sam died, it seems the assembly has failed on that part. The market women are back. There is no social distancing protocol. I can count most of them here are not in their face still. So that's the situation here, Daniel.
Now, Natalia, since this is linked to the death of the late mayor, KK Sam, who unfortunately passed from COVID-19 himself, when is his replacement being appointed? Have we heard anything about that from the Western region?
Honorable Abdul Muni is a businessman who is also a former chairman of the Takoradi constituency. Has been confirmed with 52 years from all voters at the assembly today. He says that his main aim within the 4 months left for him is to fight sanitation, especially at the market circle.
Right. Thank you very much, Natalia Quanta, and congratulations to Mr. Moni. Hopefully, he will be able to restore the COVID-19 safety protocols which were championed by his predecessor, KK Sam. Let's now speak to Eliasu Tanko. Last week, Eliasu, we spoke to you on the opening of the Bagri Dam and its effect on the people. What more have we found? We'll reconnect with Peter, with Ilyasu Tanko very, very shortly. But let's talk to Peter Senu in the Oti region in the meantime. Peter, what have you uncovered this week? If you could unmute your microphone, Peter.
Right, that's okay. I'm okay now. Yeah, my take this week is on the revelation by the District Director of Health for the KGB district that there is insufficient funds for, COVID-19 surveillance in the district. And then that is a sad reality. He has to complain to the media. And then we can also confirm that this is not just a KGB district issue. We can confirm that it is, we can say it's a regional issue that various directors of the health services would have to deal with in terms of COVID-19 fight. The sad reality, again, is the fact that various heads of institutions have also been sternly warned not to complain to the media, citing election year disaffection. And then so they are asked to keep quiet. And how can we get our problems resolved if we are quiet over them? We cannot continue to play the ostrich.
That's quite unfortunate, Peter. But I want to know quickly, Peter, if you can hear me, I want to know very quickly, so there's a lack of funds going to the heads of authorities to fight COVID-19. I'm curious about how that is reflecting in the fight on the streets. Are we seeing people taking personal responsibility and observing social distancing? Are we seeing a shortage in PPEs? How does that lack of money reflect to life in the OT region or in KJB?
Well, if you want to talk about the protocols, I would say that it is getting relaxed. As we have been advised that we would have to live with the virus, people are no longer strictly wearing the face mask as we used to see. And my understanding is, or my sources tell me that there is no surveillance strictly done as we used to see it in the early stages of the COVID-19 fight. And that if one does not fall sick really and report to any health facility in the district, no one does anything really about COVID-19 fight. That is what my sources tell me, Daniel.
That's very interesting, Peter. Thank you very much for joining us with those updates from the OT region. No enhanced surveillance going on regards to COVID-19. There's only general surveillance. That's quite interesting. Let's go to Isaac Nonya in the Savannah region. Now, Isaac, last week, the Wasi riots in Indira Jakpa Senior High School dominated the news across the country. What is the picture like this week? Right, Isaac, if you can hear me, please unmute your microphone.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great, let's go ahead.
Good. What was the question, please?
Right, I was asking about the situation at Indira Jakpa Senior High School.
That's correct. The findings led by the Municipal Chief Executive of Damago, Muhazu Jibril, were able to come up with 13 names, 2 ladies and the rest boys. And we are told those names have been submitted to the national level. But what was not told to both GES and to management is the missing link that really sparked the routing among the students. One, there's this particular teacher who happened to be called Joseph Bala. Joseph Bala is the biology teacher of the school. Then one Yombo is the integrated teacher of the school. The day of the integrated science paper, a day to that, the Yombo allegedly leaked a question paper to Joseph Bala to answer and bring the question to the exam paper, the exam hall. That was done. But for him to be able to have access to the Yombo who was evaluating the paper became a problem.
Okay.
So the up and down movement sparked the vigilance of those who were also with Yombo. They tried to find out what.
Right, Isaac. Unfortunately, we are having a challenge with your connection, so your audio connection is a bit bad. We'll get back and hear the details of that story a bit later. Let's wrap up in the northeast region with Ilyasu Tanko. Ilyasu, So what's the latest on the opening of the Bagri Dam?
My line was breaking.
Well, Daniel, I'm just coming from the communities along the White Volta River in the Northeast region. The NADMO has issued warning for the communities along that the waterway to move. But unfortunately, I can report that these residents are still occupying the communities. They told me that some of the communities actually said that they have not seen NADMO officials in their community. The NADMO have not come to tell them to move. And as you speak right now, they are still occupying the communities.
That's quite the concern. Why are they still there, Ilyasu? Did you speak to them?
Yes, of course. I spoke to them, and they said, like I said, one of the challenges that the NADMO in the municipality is heavily challenged. My sources, I spoke to the officials there. They do not even have a vehicle to go to these communities to embark on desensitization. Some of the families or the community members to tell me that this is where they farm. That area is where they get their livelihood, and so it is very difficult for them to move. I mean, this is a yearly ritual. Sometimes they will have to send security forces before they force this, residents out of the place. And so it's just continuation of what we've been witnessing over the years, Daniel.
Ilyasu, thank you very much for joining us with those updates. All the best to the people living on the banks of the Volta. Let's go to the eastern region. A big arrest was made this week at Osino. Maxwell Kudeko joins us with those updates. Now, we understand the operator and the owner of EmpressLeaks.com was operating in Osino, and he was caught there. What more has become of this story, Maxwell? Right, Maxwell, if you can hear me, what's the latest on the arrest of the owner of EmpressLeaks.com? Right, unfortunately, we are unable to establish contact with Maxwell Kudeko currently. We'll do that and bring that story to you later. But that brings from our own correspondence to an end. Let's move to other stories. And in our COVID-19 Impact series today, we focus on a 40-year-old woman who's struggling to feed her 2 children after the pandemic caused her to lose her sources of livelihood. It is one of many events of life militating against the empowerment and equal rights of women in Ghana. We have a conversation on this shortly when officials of SRAJ and the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative join us. First though, JoyNews' Annabella Ohinijan's story after visiting the 40-year-old widow to find out about the extreme techniques employed by her 2 sons who are usually left with no option but to learn on an empty stomach. Her report is read to you. You're still live on the Pulse. We'll bring you that report after these few messages. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. You're still live on the Pulse. Now, in our COVID-19 Impact series today, like I said earlier, we're focusing on a 40-year-old woman who's struggling to fend for her 2 children after the pandemic caused her to lose her source of livelihood. It's one of the many life events militating against the empowerment and equal rights of women in Ghana. We have a conversation on this shortly. Officials of SRAJ and the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative are joining us. First, though, JoyNews' Annabella Ohinijan's report after visiting the 40-year-old widow to find out about the extreme techniques employed by her 2 sons, who are usually left with no option but to learn on an empty stomach. Her report is read to you.
Nightfall is the best time for Theophilus Akoto to study. He's a final year student readying himself for this year's BEC. But Theo has many hurdles to leap. Tonight, like many other nights, Theophilus and his brother would be going to bed with no food. As he flips through his books, his legs are swallowed deep in the bucket of water. I asked him why.
In school, my teacher once told me that when he was young, you normally do this to learn. If you're hungry, I used to say sometimes you're hungry, it forces you to sleep. So if I'm hungry, then I don't want to sleep. I just take the bowl of water and place my leg inside and take some water beside me and start drinking.
He lives in an uncompleted building at Agape Town in Ablekuma, one of Accra's sprawling suburbs, with his family.
He falls asleep because of anger by 7:30 or 6 o'clock, and he's asleep. So I want him to learn, so I take him through these measures and so we learn together.
His mother, Mami Efua Taylor, a 40-year-old widow, has been without work for the last 8 years. Before COVID-19, she was fetching water for building construction sites. When the pandemic hit, many of the sites stopped working. She was left hanging.
My mother is dead. My father is dead. My husband too is dead. Taking care of the children is tough. If I had my way, I could go to bed with no food. But I worry about the children, their school and upbringing.
As if all these are not enough, Mami has to deal with hernia condition that her son has lived with for 13 years now.
Peninsula program. It's a hernia program. My son has hernia. I think about it every day. I have blood pressure and I worry a lot. Sometimes I am tempted to poison myself and poison the kids too.
I want to go forward. So I take my education serious by doing this procedure so I'll not fall asleep and learn frequently. So in the near future, I'll pass my BSc and go to the next stage. As a civil engineer, I see my strength in it. I'm good in maths and science.
Theophilus and his mother are not sure what tomorrow holds or where help will come from. And as his exam is only a month away, he and his family continue to live in fear and uncertainty.
The eyes of that young man seem to be piercing into my soul, I tell you. Very heartbreaking story there. Mina Mensah, Director at Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, CHRI Africa Office, and Marinate, Greater Accra Regional Director of SHRAJ, the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, are our guests this afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon, Daniel.
Now, this has been exposed by COVID, but I mean, we're just having a conversation about how the real conversation is about inequality and how the disadvantaged population in Ghana has been exposed by this pandemic. Let me begin with you.
Thank you, Daniel, for this opportunity. You've hit the nail right on the head. Some of these things have been happening for so long, forever. So society has taken it as one of those things that happen. But you see, the state owes its citizens a certain obligation. Ghana has signed onto quite a number of instruments which requires that there are structures in place to take care of the citizenry and the vulnerable, especially women and children, when things like this happen. Even when things like this have not happened, there ought to be structures in place to take care of women and children. Unfortunately, we cannot say that things are functioning in Ghana. We do have the social welfare department, but that's just it. It is so under-resourced that nothing much is happening there. The Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection is there, but what kind of programs do they have in place? And in any case, even if they have the programs, do we have the data to follow up on such people. So because of that, and because of the fact that a lot of women are not able to participate in the social enterprises because of education. A lot of women have lower levels of education. When you look at the statistics, I think it's 2.5% more for males than women. So you find the number of women in professions or professional lives lower. So if you're not financially equipped, when things like this happen to you, on top of the emotional stress that you have, you're also thinking about money. So this is quite rampant. Unfortunately, COVID has made it so obvious and so in your face. Because, I mean, with COVID, imagine you've lost your job. You can't go out to sell because of the social distancing. Now, at least it's a bit better. What do? You have children to feed. I think that these are some of the challenges that we are facing as a country. I know someone would say that it's worldwide, but I think that for us in Africa, and Ghana in particular, it's even worse because the structures just do not exist.
Let me come to you, Mary. Now, Ghana is, from what I understand, the first country to sign, for instance, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, CRC, back in 1990. And the protection of vulnerable like children is also what we're talking about. Unfortunately, we are not fully compliant with it. After 30 good years, what are the real roadblocks in there?
Well, thank you very much. I think signing onto a document is not just the most important thing. It is important, but then there has to be structures on the ground to implement what the law actually says. And yes, the law was passed in Ghana, Act 520, in respect of that treaty that was signed. And then the gender ministry to support women and children. However, you realize that there are certain things that must be done. There are policies on the ground, I must say, to support family and others, but it is not actually working properly, I must say.
Why?
The laws are there, but the enforcement of the laws is another. Why? Because the state, which is the primary actor of the standards, principles, and then the guarantees of human rights, is supposed to, you know, how do I put it, have a rights-based approach to some of these things. Once you have signed onto a document, you must ensure that you put structures, you volunteer money, you set money aside to implement. And so fine. Some people will say that over the years, children have been catered for in terms of education and all, but COVID-19 has revealed a lot of, you know, hardship in the system, and therefore the gender ministry must be resourced to take care of, especially women who are in this area a bit below the belt, because most women are in the informal sector. And
now, I'm just scanning through some of the numbers, I mean, that I can pick up. In 2017, 72.6 million was allocated for child protection. Only 33.1% was disbursed. And this will interest you. Like Mary said, we've signed a lot of things. We've adopted the Child and Family Welfare Policy, the Justice for Children Policy, the National Gender Policy, the 5-year strategic plan to help prevent adolescent pregnancies, Ghana Family Planning Costing Implementation, that's 5, the National Strategic Framework on Ending Child Marriage, and so that's 6 different things we have said we will do. None of them have been implemented fully. Are we serious about social protection in Ghana?
Daniel, we are not serious about a lot of things. And I think that our priorities also need to be looked at. As a country, we tend to prioritize things that in other in the developed world are not priorities. And so when we look at the child and we look at the policies that we put in place, generally we have lovely laws, lovely policies in this country. If you're talking about the laws, quite a number of them are good. But the implementation, and sometimes it is the political will. Unfortunately, we live in a society where people are not very well educated on their rights. It's not about just being academically educated. It's being educated on your rights, being self-aware that the state owes me this and that I should put pressure on the state to ensure that my rights are respected and the things that the state has to do for me, it is done. And then we are very well steeped in culture, which means that we need to be able to educate individuals a lot to move from certain cultural practices that hinder even the state to be able to ensure that some of the laws are implemented. And let's look at the
What are some of these cultural practices?
Some of these cultural practices, let me give you a very basic one. Looking at the child, for instance. In certain places, we put more emphasis on the boy than the girl. It is coming down. Yes, we are promoting girl-child education. More girls are going to school. But what is the percentage? So obviously, if you have a home where there's a boy and a girl, and you've not been educated to that level, and you still think like that, you would educate your boy child. Your girl child might not get the same education, and in times like this, when the person might not have the necessary work that she's supposed to have, or the wherewithal, then she has children, she has to look after the children. And what is the foundation? The foundation is because of the way she was socialized, the traditional practice where that they put more value on the male than the female. Right. And that is a bit difficult to do.
Right. Now, because we cover a lot of politics on this platform, I think we've come to understand, and I was just taking a cursory glance at the latest Afrobarometer report, important problems for Ghanaian young people: unemployment, education, infrastructure, health, water supply, economy, crime and security, and it goes on and on and on. There's nothing specifically about social protection, but it is one of our biggest problems because 45% of our population, according to the GSS, is multidimensionally poor. I linked that on the post just a few days ago. How do we paint the picture that catering for these 13.5 million people is actually solving the problems that matter to Ghanaians, like unemployment, health, and what have you? How do we make it clear, Mary?
It's setting our priorities right. You know, if one person, someone will say, if you have several children to cater for and there are various needs, it's important to identify which particular need is more important and necessary. Again, like we said, strong institutions is what will also help us direct the need of society and the need of Ghanaians, especially the youth, as you just mentioned. It's not just institution, but strong institution. How do we get strong institutions to, you know, champion the cause of our citizenry? It's very important. More importantly, the institutions are there. However, they are not resourced in order to be able to, you know, do the necessary work they're supposed to do to achieve the maximum effect. It's very, very important. For instance, look at the social welfare. We don't have any welfare system, but we have a social welfare institution. And that institution is not functioning properly because they are under-resourced. You let a child be brought to Shraj, roaming in the streets, and we're looking for shelter for such a child. It's very difficult at times to even get a place for that child at social welfare. Sometimes we have to rely on NGOs and other stakeholders because, of course, human rights achievement or realization is not just the role of the state, but there are other stakeholders who also help to achieve that.
Interesting. So I'm coming back to you, Mina, because so yes, we understand that, like you said, there's a lack of political will. The only thing politicians understand is the citizens' demand, the citizens' vote. But the citizens, from the data I'm reading to you, do not appreciate these issues either, whether they're in the middle class or they are underprivileged themselves. So I'm bringing back that question to you. How do we marry the two? How do we help people understand that social welfare and social protection is also about your healthcare, and it's also about your jobs, it's also about your education? How do we do that?
Daniel, you see, an informed population is a wealthy population. It's just because people are not informed. Do people really understand social protection in the first place? Do people connect that to their personal well-being? So talking about institutions, the institution that is supposed to educate you mostly on that is the NCCE. Let's look at the NCCE. I mean, their budget and everything. So, and then our socialization. You see, we in the olden days, it was a community thing. Somebody looks after the other and stuff. Things are changing, things are different. It's more of each one for himself, God for us all. Unfortunately, whilst we are doing that, we are not educating the citizenry to say that, fine, we are in a different kind of governance structure. The responsibility is on government to ensure that, because you do have a social contract with the states. That is why we pay taxes. So it is the responsibility of the state to empower the citizens to demand. The state is not doing that. The citizenry in recent times is so polarized that if somebody is even going to do the education, they just start tagging. It's because this person, or put a demand, it's because this person is for party A, and that's why the person is asking for that. So for me, it's lack of information and lack of understanding. And the third thing is a very apathetic society. Ghanaians are laid back, and sometimes we are laid back to the point of being apathetic, thinking that the ruling class owes us something. We don't have that, and we don't understand that the power is actually ours, and it is our right to demand that they do things that favor us. And it's because we do not have information. Politicians tell us what they want to tell us, not necessarily what we want to know and what will benefit us. So you look at the information out there, and how many times do you hear any state official coming out to say that, oh, government is responsible to do, it's only during this COVID era that we hear the government is responsible for certain things, but on the whole, how many times doesn't any official come out to say that the state owes you A, B, C, D, so it's your right to demand that? And unfortunately, civil society is a partner in this, but how much can civil society do? Especially when sometimes, instead of the state seeing civil society as a partner, the state sees it like we are doing civil society a favor, or the NGOs a favor, by allowing them to be on our platforms or giving them the information that they need to help us educate the citizens.
So they make it difficult for civil society operations?
Yes, they don't even involve you. So you need to do a lot of guesswork, walking around, trying to beg for information, trying to, you know, cajole people to be part of things that ordinarily, if the space is opened for civil society to help, it will make it easier. So civil society is helping, but we are helping it in, the environment is not really unfriendly, but it's more like indifferent, kind of.
Now, Sraj is one of the institutions that we want to strengthen. Let's be frank here. How much has come to your office?
You want to strengthen.
How much has come to your office this year?
Oh, let me, frankly speaking, I can't give figures, but over the short period, our budget has received some much attention. Though there's more room for improvement, I must say, but it hasn't been that. It's been a bit encouraging, I must say, but not to what we expect, because there's a lot to be done as Sraj.
How many people do you have in your office?
In my office?
Yes, in the Greater Accra region.
Oh, the Greater Accra, we have 45.
45 officers?
Yes.
And what is the caseload like? What's an average day like for an officer? What are you supposed to do?
An average day, like you come in, you expect to receive a complaint, you expect to go out and do public education, like Mina just said, sensitize the people on their rights. You expect to attend to clients who are walking in to follow up on their cases. You expect to do your report and attend to other stakeholders. So there's a lot we do there.
And I'm just imagining the population, Mina, the population of the Greater Accra region. Our voter population alone is 3.5 million. On the last
have the regional, we have the head office, and we also have the regional, and we have district offices all across.
For all across. That's why I wanted to know the number of officers that we have that are in charge of the Greater Accra region.
Alone.
The 3.5 million of us, yes.
And like I'm saying, the Greater Accra region is not responsible for the whole 3.5.
So there
we have the regional, the head office, which has a lot of officers.
And there are district offices as well. I'm
also to serve people at the district level.
I'll take out head office because the head office is for Ghana, not for
Accra. But they also have control in Greater Accra.
Right. But I think the picture is really clear that there's a lot that must be done.
Oh, yes. Like we were saying, getting more officers on board will not be a bad idea at all. We still are still employing people because we need more people to join the fold for us to do the work. But we also must say that we need the media to help. You are the fourth estates of the arm of government. It's very important that the media partner with institutions like us, like that of MENA, because you realize that the media are supposed to follow up on agendas of the states and also report. And like I said, everything we do these days should be right-based approach. If the media will focus that we are following this program because it affects the rights and the rights and the freedom of other people or of the vulnerable, of women. It's a project, inequality, and we want to follow up on it and see what the state is doing. Sometimes the role of the media may put the state on its toes to do that which is expected.
Which is why we are here now.
Exactly, and we thank you for the opportunity, but more must be done. It's very, very important because...
Okay. What is there? I just want a quick final word from both ladies. I mean, beginning with you, the state must do something. From the trend that we have seen, it is not doing it. There's no hiding behind it from both administrations. What can we do? What can be done immediately?
Immediately, what can be done is for the citizens to rise up, for the media to be at the forefront of the education. Because like Mary said, and I said, an informed population is a wealthy population. It's only when the people are informed as to what their rights are, what their benefits are, what they stand to gain if they involve themselves and demand for the right thing to be done, the right opportunities to be given them, the right things to be looked at. Let's look at this affirmative action law. As far back as 1990-something, this the first policy came up. And we've been toying with this thing for a very long time. It is because as much as people are demanding, women are demanding, and at the level of the grassroots, how many women are rising up and are demanding this? And it has become a women thing instead of a Ghana thing. And that is where the challenge is. Because you see, for our male folks, if you have a woman who is empowered, it makes life easier on you. Right. Because you bring 10 CDs, I bring 10 CDs.
Right. We have very empowered woman at the back telling me to close. The affirmative action bill was introduced in 1998.
Yes.
I just wanted to check that.
And again, we are calling on citizens. You see, the law in UK developed because citizens were very active and assertive. They knew what was in the law, their rights and their freedoms. And they had to go to the courts to enforce. So we are calling on citizenry to be up and coming, to be active, and to join forces to ensure that certain things, injustices in the system are done away with by being assertive.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much. Mina, you're still live on The Pulse. I've been speaking with Mina Mensah, Director, Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative, CHRI Africa Office, and Mary Nate, Greater Accra Regional Director of SHRAJ. You're still live on The Pulse. We'll be right back because for about 2 hours, 6 independent presidential hopefuls responded to issues on corruption, education, health, and many others, including sanitation. That's coming up. We'll be telling you exactly what they demanded in just a few minutes. Stay with us. Now, for about 2 hours, 6 independent presidential hopefuls responded to issues on corruption, education, health, and many others, including sanitation, in the debate organized by Imani Africa and JoyNews, your election headquarters. The program, moderated by head of our political desk, Evan Spencer, and editor MFA Apau, saw most of the respondents pushing for the scrapping of the sanitation ministry, which is also being backed by a section of the public. Let's hear them.
Sanitation, which ministry is doing practically nothing. They had a budget of 200 million dissipated, and the country is full of filth.
I do believe that the Ministry of Sanitation is irrelevant. It's a result of the absence of the infrastructure to deal with the field. So there's two ways we're considering this. To have the whole issue of sanitation under the Ministry of Infrastructure or under the Ministry of Health, because, you know, the essence of the whole infrastructure is that if it doesn't happen, you get filth. If filth is there, you get people getting sick, they get back into the health cycle, and it's a cycle. So it's either under health or the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Now, President of Imani Africa, Franklin Kujo, on News Desk earlier supported the call. Yeah, his thoughts.
I thought that another revolutionary revelation was the discarding of the sanitation ministry, something I totally support. In fact, they were echoing my thoughts exactly. Because and I think it was Forian who suggested that you gave 200 million Ghana cedis to a ministry that virtually did nothing. Zero, zilch. And then wasted everybody's time when you could have used that money to empower local government authorities, because sanitation issues are local. And indeed, it could have also been, of course, I would have thought they would have added the other element of being supporting the private entities with tax breaks to encourage them to deal with sanitation, rather than set up a bureaucracy that doesn't even know how to do its own calculations, claims they've solved the promise of Accra being the cleanest city in Africa during the lockdown, and it's now 85% clean. I don't know who is doing those mathematics for them. But I was happy. In fact, I was elated. If you saw the cameras, when almost all the candidates said the sanitation ministry should go away. To think that they thought, Oso, for instance, also mentions the issues of mergers, right? It tells you that I like to merge a number of the ministries because it's important. For example, says something similar, but he goes ahead to say he is not really interested in cutting back on ministries, or disbanding ministries, but he's interested in, merging them, making sure that they are departmental heads. Something I saw in my travels in Australia and the UK, when government officials were telling me in Australia, for instance, the agencies of land, agric, and forestry lumped under one. And so they are just agency desk, and then there's a ministry. Now that's a country that is the 12th largest economy in the world, with almost half our population, and it's far richer than us. But here we are doing free everything, free human resource, free everything. So look, there were a lot of useful ideas.
Now, the National Peace Council is calling for collaboration among political parties in the country towards bringing an end to electoral violence. It says it is time for political parties to build trust in state agencies mandated to crack down on the activities of vigilante groups. Chairman of the council, Most Reverend Emmanuel Asante, who was addressing an advocacy workshop on Vigilantism and Related Offences Act in Accra, in Ashanti region, said, key stakeholders competing to lead the development of the country, if politicians do not prioritize national interest ahead of that of their parties, the very people whose mandates they seek would suffer the consequences of electoral violence.
We must have the trust and believe in our institutions in this country. If we will continue to behave the way we are behaving, that as soon as I'm in opposition, I do not trust all the institutions. I think the institutions are there for the government. We're not going to get anywhere. If I'm in government and somebody is also cracking the whip, and it has to do with somebody within my party, I shouldn't think that the person who is doing it is against my party. That's why they are doing that. That's where the trust deficit comes in. Let us allow institutions we have put in place to operate in accordance with the laws of the land, and there will be peace in our country.
Well, the NDC has been reacting to this call from the National Peace Council. Its Director of Elections, Elvis Ifie Ankra, says the call should rather be directed at the police service, which he believes has been applying the law selectively.
I think this whole talk of parties meeting is actually an insult on our intelligence. People commit crime. They are known. People go and beat people. People shoot people. People stab people. They kill them. The law enforcement agencies must deal with them. All these conferences, they become meaningless. Haven't we signed an accord already? Don't we have a vigilantism bill? Don't we have laws? So what is this? It's a charade. Okay? we must be forthright. And I'm getting tired of this business when people commit crime, then they will generalize and equalize MPP, NDC. How many MPP people, NDC people did you see carrying guns and firing at people? How many NDC people did you see shooting or beating or maiming? Look at all the incidents. And this is the worst form of registration violence in the history of modern Ghana. We must say it as it is and stop rationalizing and sugarcoating it. Horrible violence, 2 people dead if they were horrible, unacceptable. People have been beaten, cars bent. The culprits must be brought to book and dealt with, period. I also always report people, it must be enforced. Some of those same thugs went around beating people in Kaswa. That is the solution. We can meet and talk, but at the end of the day, if people don't have a feeling that if they commit crime, they'll be dealt with according to the full rigors of that, it will be a bloody waste of everybody's time.
Back to our earlier story where there has been a call for the scrapping of the Sanitation Ministry. Ata Ahen is Vice Chair for the Coalition of Non-Governmental Organizations in Water and Sanitation, Countrywide. Mr. Ahen, what's your stand on this? Should the Sanitation Ministry be scrapped?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let's understand that there is a history to the establishment of the Ministry of Sanitation and Water Resources. And it's not for nothing that the name of the ministry is Sanitation and Water Resources, and not Water Resources and Sanitation. Because previously, we were all under 2 ministries. And so it was difficult for you to interface effectively. We were under the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing, and also the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. And it wasn't easy dealing with 2 ministries at the same time. And so the establishment of this ministry, if for nothing at all, has given us a one-stop shop for easy interface among stakeholders. This was difficult previously. The second reason why I think the ministry is important is the fact that it has promoted accountability. Like I told you, if you were dealing with the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, and at the same time the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing, it was a big issue. I mean, because you could not hold one ministry to account. Even at the Ministry of Local Government, if sanitation was not being done well, you could not have called for the collapse of the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development because it had several other tasks to perform. I think we should also understand that this is quite a young ministry, but people expect it to be running like other ministries have been running. Look, I can tell you that it takes time for you to develop your strategic plans. It takes time for you to do your institutional realignment. It takes time for the organizational culture to develop, and even your staffing, to get your staffing right. As I speak to you, policies are being reviewed, and there are procurement processes ongoing to ensure that the national water policy, the environmental sanitation policies are reviewed. And
but Mr. Ahen, the National Sanitation Plan,
be patient a little.
The National Sanitation Plan was launched by President Akufo-Addo in 2017. Just this week, we had a conversation about how the real efforts to see that broad agenda of Accra being the cleanest city in Africa has not been put in. Is that not enough justification for these calls?
Yes, and I guess you are talking about the National Sanitation Campaign. Yes, and you are right on that score. It was launched 2017 by the president. But I think that, the kind of efforts we want to see in pushing this agenda, has not been forthcoming. Okay. But that is not the failure of the ministry for me. The entire government machinery for me is not giving this ministry the kind of attention that it deserves. Right, Mr. Ahen, we are giving attention to free SHS. If we are giving the same attention to sanitation, we will succeed.
Ms. Ahen, thank you so much. It's time for us to go, and so we will continue this conversation at a later time. Thank you so much. A fire has gutted the Electoral Commission's offices located at Sapheman in the Ga West Municipality. The blaze, which started at about 2:30 at dawn today, is said to have consumed almost everything in the building, which also serves as the regional office of the election management body. Officials of the fire service and the Ghana Police Service have begun investigating to ascertain the cause of the fire. We'll get details in later bulletins, but that's it from us here. At this side of the bulletin, up next is sports. I'll be back right after. Stay with us.